Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Good afternoon ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to welcome you to the research collaboration in indigenous psychology and local wisdoms. Let me introduce myself. My name is Theo, who is going to be the master of ceremony for this event. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to our second session of our meeting today, which is to hear from our seminar speaker. The seminar speech will be moderated by Mr. Eridani Angga Wijayanto, MPSI Psikolog. Before beginning, allow me to read the short curriculum vitae of the moderator.
Good afternoon, selamat siang. This is not international seminar, so I will bring this occasion in two language, bahasa Indonesia and mixed with English. Tapi saya akan banyak menggunakan bahasa Indonesia ketika berinteraksi bersama teman-teman. Hari ini kita akan ngobrol, kita akan diskusi, kita akan banyak belajar bersama seorang ahli dari Inha University. Tahu kan Inha University siapa orang terkenal yang dari Inha University? Who is the famous person from Inha University? Ada yang tahu? Salah satunya ini adalah Korean Idol, dan dia dikenal dengan sebutan Mas Agung. Siapa? Ya, Siwon Choi itu adalah alumni dari Inha University. Saya minta izin untuk lepas masker ya, oke. Karena PPKM sudah dicabut. Ngomong-ngomong PPKM dicabut, kemarin 1 minggu yang lalu saya habis menjalani operasi kecil di belakang telinga saya. Tapi ternyata masih diminta untuk swab antigen. Ya kayaknya stoknya masih banyak ya, jadi masih ada syarat seperti itu. Nah, ngomong-ngomong tentang COVID-19 yang tampaknya belum meskipun PPKM sudah dicabut, tapi ternyata masih ada sisa-sisa problem yang ada di sekitar kita. Salah satunya adalah isu-isu terkait mental health. Nah, hari ini kita akan belajar langsung dari seorang ahli yang bernama Profesor Wikol Kim. Mohon maaf apabila ada kesalahan dalam pronunciation. Profesor Kim, I'm sorry if there is any wrong pronunciation about your names. Jadi kita akan belajar dari beliau. Beliau adalah seorang ahli. He is an expert about indigenous psychology. Jadi beliau ini adalah expert atau ahli di bidang indigenous psychology. Jadi teman-teman, indigenous psychology itu apa sih? Nah, ini sebenarnya bidang ilmunya Pak Hara. Tapi di sini teman-teman nggak cuma psikologi ya. Di sini ada yang non psikologi juga ya, karena ini mahasiswa UMBY keseluruhan. Jadi secara sederhana, mungkin kalau saya salah nanti Pak Hara bisa memberikan informasi salah mas gitu ya. Indigenous psychology itu adalah ilmu psikologi yang belajar terkait dengan latar belakang budaya. Jadi misalnya masalah atau ilmu psikologi di Amerika sono, di Eropa sono, itu berbeda dengan isu patologis psikologi di Indonesia. Tadi pagi itu Prof. Kim sempat menjelaskan bahwa kalau di Amerika itu orientasinya itu masih terkait intelektual, intelijensi. Sementara kalau di Indonesia itu masih kuat faktor afektifnya. Jadi emotional intelligence itu masih sangat penting di Indonesia. Jadi ada perbedaan. Kalau di Amerika itu masih intelektual, kecerdasan intelektual, tapi di Indonesia itu masyarakatnya afeknya sangat kuat. Nah, tapi ada pergeseran di Indonesia ini. Sekitar 10 atau 20 tahun yang lalu, Indonesia itu dikenal sebagai negara yang pemulihan atau recovery terhadap masalah mental itu termasuk cepat. Karena faktor budaya, karena faktor dukungan sosial, karena faktor masyarakat kita. Sehingga ketika ada orang-orang yang punya permasalahan psikologis, itu pulihnya termasuk cepat di Indonesia itu. Tetapi akhir-akhir ini itu mulai ada pergeseran. Jadi di Indonesia itu mulai masalah-masalah mental atau isu-isu psikologi itu mulai makin dalam, makin banyak. Jumlah bunuh diri di Yogyakarta itu meningkat dalam beberapa tahun terakhir ini. Kemudian okupansi di RSC cenderung meningkat. Kunjungan-kunjungan ke psikiater meningkat drastis. Nah, ini nanti ya, teman-teman silahkan nanti belajar dari Prof. Kim. Kemudian teman-teman nanti juga silahkan bertanya apabila teman-teman ada pertanyaan. Saya persilahkan nanti mau langsung bertanya dalam bahasa Inggris atau bahasa Indonesia. Saya persilahkan nanti kalau mau tanya dalam bahasa Indonesia akan kami terjemahkan. Jadi kita gali. Apalagi ini dari Korea ya, negara yang akhir-akhir ini menjadi buah bibir di era globalisasi. Oke, tanpa berlama-lama kita saksikan CV dari Profesor Wee Hol Kim yang hari ini akan memberikan materi pada kita. Sepintas, at a glance kita lihat profil dari Profesor Kim. Beliau kuliahnya S1 itu di University of Toronto dan kemudian S2 dan S3-nya juga di University of Queens di Kanada. Jadi beliau mendapatkan pengalaman pendidikannya dari Kanada. Oke, tanpa berlama-lama, please welcome Profesor Kim.
It feels funny standing up here since I'm not a K-pop star, so I'll come down. So, my name is Yoo-Cho Kim. I'm a professor teaching in psychology, but I teach in business school, and I'll explain why. So if you can begin my PowerPoint presentation. So the summary that I want you to think about, why are Indonesians happy? Economy is not the best in the world. You don't have many infrastructure, and you don't have many of the benefits in terms of technology. I want you to think about that. And the second thing, I want you to think about what makes you happy. Okay? And the third thing, when are you happy? And so you have to understand these key components. And so not all relationships are good. So I will explain to you and introduce psychological theories and tell you why Americans are unhappy and why you have to develop indigenous and cultural psychology to understand yourself, your family members, and your culture in order to be successful and happy. And I'll introduce a little bit of Korean culture and what is happening in Korea today. So, okay. So the question I asked, where do you live? In Jogja, or you're from Jakarta, or you're from Makassar, or I'm from Korea. So if you live in a world that exists, physical world, you're an animal. I'm not making fun of you. We are animal. We're Homo sapiens. We come from the ape family, okay? But do you behave like animals, like orangutans and chimpanzee? No. Why do you not behave like animals? Why? Because we have culture. People are different from animals because we have culture. So what is culture? What you are seeing is my body, okay? Biology is part of the animal kingdom. But unlike most Korean, I speak English well, right? Why? Because I grew up in Canada. And what does that mean? I have a different software, okay? So how I use my body is influenced by the software in terms of the language, in terms of the value. So as Indonesian, you speak Bahasa Indonesia because that's the software that you have downloaded, and that is the software that you're using. So hardware, you can see the body, but can you see the software in Apple or your smartphone? You don't see the software, but it is a software that runs the smartphone, okay? So what is culture? Is a software of the mind that uses the body and accomplishes what we want. So biologically, human beings and chimpanzee share 98.5% of the genes. Biologically, we're very similar. Any two human beings share 99.5% of the genes. Biologically, we're virtually identical. But do you behave like American or Korean, Chinese, or German? You behave differently, think differently, because you have a different software. That's called language, food, customs, and value. So culture makes us different. Since I grew up in Canada, it's no problem speaking English. I received all my education. But if I grew up in Jogja, I would speak Bahasa Indonesia. I would drive a motorcycle, okay? And I'll go to the river and have nasi goreng or Malioboro, okay? And so what is natural to you is cultural. Speaking Bahasa, having Indonesian family, and eating Japanese food, okay? Of course, if you're Sundanese, you'll be slightly different. If you're from Sumatra, there will be a difference. Even though you look identical, but it's the software that makes us different. So biology makes us similar, culture makes us different. But what is more important than our biology is our culture, because it's the software that runs. And there is a third possibility, that is, this is little bit slow, so world of possibilities. You're young. What are your dreams? What are your goals? Okay. Do you want to live like your parents? Probably not, right? Boring. You want to have a different life. Where do you live? So I do research with Millennial and Gen Z, and you live with your parents, but you spend more time here, right? And I hear a lot of Indonesians listen to K-pop. I don't know why, but you live here. So if your body is here in your home, but you have access to the world through internet, and you watch YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. So you're influenced by where you live. And you live in a cyber world. And pretty soon you'll get involved in metaverse. You'll have the digital double, someone who you can go through in a digital world. So you represent the future and innovations. Well, future innovator. So you can be creative innovators, okay? You can create, you can participate. So we have 3 different reality. Our biology, my height and weight, and my genes, my culture in terms of language and value. But the most important thing is what do you want to accomplish in the future, okay? The goals you have, and that's why you are at this university. So let me introduce you to psychology and understanding people. I went to University of Toronto, majoring in psychology, and I study rats. So do you think understanding rats helped me to understand people? That's called behaviorism. Then I conducted experiments. Is experiments or are experiments a good way to understand people, like you do in physics? And I love statistics. I analyze data. So if you're a psychology major, you learn about experimentation of animals, people, and statistics. But you know who that is? Barack Obama. Can you talk to your grandmother? Do you understand your grandmother? So does psychology help you to communicate with your grandmother? And the answer is no. She doesn't know what I'm talking about. She said, what I'm talking about doesn't make any sense. Rats and statistics and experiments. Why? Because this is American psychology. It's not universal. And so I'm proposing indigenous and cultural psychology because you live in Jogja with your parents. You have a different culture. And so you have to develop an understanding of who you are, where you came from, your parents, and understand your cultural value. So you learn about Sigmund Freud, psychoanalysis. Why are you learning about Sigmund Freud and what he has done? Then also you learn about, this is slow. Ivan Pavlov, conditioning. John B. Watson in terms of behaviorism. And I better go a little bit closer. Jean Piaget in cognitive development. So you learn these theories, but are these theories correct? Does it help you to understand human behavior? Then Albert Bandura that I'll talk about. So the father of modern psychology is Wilhelm Wundt. He studied our body, but he said the most important is to study the mind. Okay, since it's very slow, okay, let me skip because it's very slow, and I think this is some of the details. Sorry, Let me skip some of the slide because it's a little bit too slow. Okay, so that one, okay. So many slides. Okay. Repeat the PowerPoint. Okay. Can you do several slides? I will skip many. It's too detailed. The animation makes it very slow. Smoking is not good for your health. Okay. So you can escape from that slide since we don't need it. Okay, okay. This is too complicated. So can you go down? Go down. Go down. Okay. Go down. No more. More. Okay. Okay. Why don't we go through the pictures? Okay. Up. Okay. More. Okay. Biological heritage. Yes. Okay. Yes. Sorry for the interruption. Usually I have a computer and I can move quickly, but the remote access is not good, and oops, we don't want to go there. Can you go to our biological heritage? Yeah, okay. And presentation file. So you know your parents, you know your grandparents. Do you know who your ancestor is 1 million years ago? No. So let me introduce you to your ancestor 1 million years ago. Okay, this is our ancestor. And let me introduce you to your brother and sister. You're laughing because we evolved from Homo, the closest is Pan. So our sister is bonobo monkey, and our brother is chimpanzee. We share 98.5% of the genes, about 1 million years ago. And your cousin is gorilla. And your second cousin is orangutan. You can meet him in Kalimantan, okay? Say hello. And your third cousin is Hylobass. And this is our family tree, okay? So we evolved from a family, but we are different. Why? Why are human beings different from chimpanzees? Is because we're creative. Human beings were not the hunters. We were the hunted because we're weak. We're not fast, we're not strong. So how do you survive in a very competitive environment where lions are your predator and wolves are your predator? So if you go to the beach, you find things called rocks, okay? What do you do with rocks? We learned to make tools because we're weak. So we found something strong, and we became different from chimpanzee because we're able to create not just one tool, but many tools. And we have a conceptual understanding of the basic material. Not just a smartphone with batteries and silicons and different circuit. We understand the property of a rock and property of a wood. So if you make a spear out of wood and you throw it, it wobbles because of friction. And if you make a spear out of rock, you can only throw 1-2 meters. So what we have done is combine the properties of the stick and properties of the rock. Okay. This is, maybe I will say next. Okay, next. So as you see, the rock allows stabilization, so it flies straight. And you would penetrate the fur, the wood would allow you to throw it accurately. Okay? So only human beings can analyze the property of a rock, property of the spear, and combine it. This is called innovation. That makes us different from chimpanzee. Next. Next slide. And all animals are afraid of fire. Are you afraid of fire? But do you cook? That means you're not afraid of fire. So all animal, if there's a forest fire, would run. But human beings understood the nature of fire. Next slide. Because we can control fire. What other animal can control fire? Chimpanzees, lions, wolves? No. So fire is the most powerful force in nature. And if wolves want to attack, they can't because of fire. And fire is very useful because it gets cold at night. It gives you warmth. And you can see at night. And we can control fire because we understand the nature of fire. Fire exists when there's wood. So you have to put more wood. And fire can be destroyed by water. So when there's a forest fire, you run to a lake and you're protected. And so human beings are the only animal that use the most powerful force in nature. And what did we do with it? Next slide. Next slide. So can you continue? So this is potato. Can you eat potato raw? No, you can't. You get sick. Don't eat potatoes raw. You get sick. You can eat sweet potato, but not potato. So what do you do in Java? You fry it. Okay? Can you eat raw meat? No, yes, you can. But it takes 5 hours to digest it. Okay? So you have to chew all day. And there are a lot of germs. Next slide. And so you cook it. So why do you fry it? Why do you steam it? Why? Because if you cook food, you get more calorie. Okay? Early human survival depended on getting enough calorie to survive. So by cooking food over the fire, we can get around 2,000 calories per day. So why is that important? Well, because you're hungry. But the most important thing is fire and cooking allow us to have a bigger brain. Next slide. So this is our brain. So this is the human brain here. Okay? And this is the chimpanzee. As you notice, it's about 3 to 4 times, oops. Can you have this slide? Okay. 3 or 4 times larger than chimpanzee. And this is the brain size. Okay? And so human beings have the largest brain. Why? Because we cook food over the fire and our jaw muscle became smaller. Our teeth became smaller because you don't have to chew. And our brain can become enlarged because you need minimum 2,000 calories to support our large brain. Is there anyone on diet here? You look very thin. I have to go on a diet because I eat too much. Okay? Your brain cells burn most of the calorie. Okay? And so it burns 5 to 6 times more calorie than your muscle cell. Okay? So the best way to lose weight, use your brain. Okay? write a report, study for exam. So some of you study for exam, and after 2 hours, you're very hungry, and you said, why am I hungry? I didn't do anything. You burned a lot of calorie. And because we were able to cook food over the fire, our brains became bigger. So is it evolution? No, it's creativity. So Darwin is wrong. Evolution cannot explain human behavior because evolution suggests you adapt to the environment. What we did, we changed our environment, and we changed our biology, and we changed our genes. And it's called creativity. And look at which part of the brain became larger. So if a chimpanzee looks down, if a chimpanzee looks at a human being, we're ugly because our forehead is protruding, okay? And what is the forehead? This is called frontal lobe. So we have a big frontal lobe. We have a very protruding frontal lobe compared to the chimpanzee. And chimpanzee will look at us, oh, what an ugly animal, okay? Because your frontal lobe. And our free frontal lobe is where we make decisions, where we abstract, and where we have empathy. So chimpanzees, they do not have empathy the same as we do, because your parents love you and take care of you for 18 years. Chimpanzees don't. So human beings are different from chimpanzee because we take care of our family member, sick and the elderly. And also we have the cognitive capability to reason, to think ahead. And this is because we learned to cook food over the fire. That means we were able to overcome our instinct. So human beings survived not because of our instinct. That's what Freud says, that what the behaviorist said, is you are able to overcome your instinct. Your instinct will tell you, eat and sleep. Why do you come to university? Well, because you want to learn. You want to develop. And you want to develop your brain, right? And this is why human beings are different from animal. And this is what we call the software of the mind. And the worst thing that you can do is treat other people as animals, as objects. Why? Because we're subjects, and we can be creative, and we have emotions, okay? And what are the ways of treating people as objects? Racism. You have dark skin, so you must be stupid. You're a woman, so you're not intelligent, okay? You're disabled, so there's something wrong with you. Because these are skin color, or in terms of different chromosome, or in terms of not being able to walk. But the software is the most important, okay? Because I have feelings, and Steve Hawking, for example, is the greatest physicist. They're able to develop the mind. So the most important thing that you want to understand about human being is that we're creative, we're rational, and we can empathize. So this is why we can be happy. And the reason why Indonesians are happy, and this is based on result, is caring and sharing, okay? So it's not about satisfying your needs. You care for people, and you share. And when are Indonesians most happy? When you're eating. You care and you share. And so in your family, you eat together. Why should you eat together with your family? Why can't you eat alone? If you're hungry, you eat. So human beings eat together. Chimpanzees, they don't. Why do you need to eat together? Because you care and you share information. So it's not just the food that you're eating, but emotions that you're sharing that makes Indonesians happy. And that's why Indonesians are different from Americans, and that is a major reason why we're not animals. Okay, and next page. And so one other difference is our opioid bone here descended about 2 centimeters. And human beings can make 20,000 different sounds. And we can have language. For a language, you have to make 10,000 different sounds, like what I'm doing now. But if I speak Bahasa Indonesia, I use different sound versus Korean language. But bonobo monkeys can only make 15 sounds, screeching sound that monkeys make. So they cannot communicate using your vocal cord. And they cannot sing like we do, right? So what a researcher took Kanzi, a bonobo monkey, and taught her symbols. I want water. I want banana. And they would press, and the researcher would give banana or water, okay? I want to run. So we can communicate with chimpanzee using symbols, okay? It's like when you use your smartphone, you just press an app, and it goes you to Grab, and you can order food, right? You don't have to speak to the smartphone, right? And if you go to Grab, you order nasi goreng, and the driver delivers it to you, okay? So chimpanzees can use symbols. But what is the problem? She had a lot of babies. Kanzi could not teach her children sign language. And when she died, everything disappeared, okay? So second major difference, we can teach our young children knowledge and skill. And I can stand here and I can lecture and you can learn. Chimpanzees cannot. So the problem is not the biology, it's the software of the mind cannot expand beyond my body, okay? So this research stopped because Kanzi cannot teach her children. And that's why chimpanzees have not changed over 1 million years, okay? Where human beings, we develop language, we develop written language, and we were able to write it on paper. So you can read books, and we can use smartphone. Have you ever saw a chimpanzee using smartphone talk to their mother? Because they do not have the software of the mind. People are creative, innovative, and this is what makes us different. So studying rats and pigeons are very limited. Next page. So, cavemen, what do they do at night when they have nothing to do? They draw this. What is this? Information technology. So, this is a cow, and you draw in a wall. So, what you saw in nature, you draw. So, chimpanzees can record their information in their genes, okay? And genes can be passed on to a subsequent generation. Human beings, what we learn, we can draw in the cave wall. And you can teach, this is a cow, and this is how you hunt, okay? So we store information outside our body. And in the caves, it can last 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And so I don't have to teach everything individually. I can use pictures, okay? So we think this is information technology, but this is the first information technology where we provide information outside our body. So human beings are different because most of the information is not in our genes, but outside our bodies, in caves, in books, now in silicon. Next page. And this is a picture of hunting. How do you hunt? So you look at the cave, and people hunted together as a group. And so the most important thing is information that you store outside the body. So this is a smartphone. Do you know what this is? My second brain. Because I store all my information here. I don't know the phone number for my mother or wife. I have to check here. I have all my phone numbers and contact. And I communicate using WhatsApp, not my voice, right? I send messages. I use Grab. I order airplane tickets. And I watch video, and I look at influencer. So what is a smartphone, my second brain. If I lose my phone, I'm lost. And what is my laptop computer? Third brain. So I have three brains. So I'm much more intelligent than chimpanzee because I can store my information in my smartphone, and laptop, and a computer. And cloud computing connects all three. Isn't it wonderful? But the problem is we have too much information, okay? And that's the next problem. Next page. So, next page. So what makes human beings creative is being to connect and talk to people. So I can learn how to cook from a chef. I can learn how to build the bridge from engineer. So I don't have to have all the information inside my body. It's connect and develop, okay? So human beings, now we can communicate through internet. People are around the world and we can learn. And so that's why there's a creative explosion. There's so much data that you can access. 40 years ago, you have to go to the library and read a book. Now you search through Wikipedia, Google, okay? So whenever I give my lecture, my students say, check, Professor, you're wrong. I saw in the Google, we have a different information, okay? So you can check very quickly information. So millennial and new Gen Z are the most educated, sophisticated information technologists in the world, okay? And so you can be creative and innovative. But the most important thing is connecting, working together in a group, and that makes human beings very different. Next page. Who's he? Do you know him? Steve Jobs, right? Is he intelligent? Does he come from a good family? He created the most powerful, largest company in the world. This one. Did he invent the phone? No. Did he invent internet? No. Did he invent semiconductor? No. What did he invent? Nothing. What did he do? Made the phone smart, okay? Made it user-friendly. He's not an engineer. When two graduate students in Eastern USA, they became pregnant, and they decided we cannot raise them. So he was adopted, okay? So he was adopted child, and a couple in Los Altos, California, adopted him. And he was not very intelligent, and he was not rich, so he could not go to college. So he worked in his basement and met Steve Wozniak, and they decided to assemble computers. But he had a dream, because if you had a computer, it was very difficult. Have you ever used IBM punch cards? Do you know what a punch card is in IBM? You have punch holes that you feed the machine, and it processes data. Did you ever use Microsoft DOS where you have to type in all the commands? No, you don't. Now you use Windows. And Steve Jobs said, computers are very difficult to use. Why don't we make it simple, user-friendly? And all the engineers said, why do you need a computer? Only engineers and scientists need a computer. And said, this is convenient. Why do we not make computers? So he made Apple computer, but it was not very popular. And he did not do very well. And so he was kicked out of his own company. And then he created another company. Then they decided to bring him back. So his Apple computer did not succeed, but he created the iPod and now the smartphone. And he became the richest person in the world. Why? Not because of technology, because he understood people. He understood what people wanted. So he's not a genius. He's not an engineer. He never graduated from engineering. He never graduated from college. But once he created a device that other people made, he made it easier to use. And guess what? He has a PhD degrees in Stanford, honorary degree, because of his contribution. So what did Steve Jobs do? Make technology easy to use. Okay. So he understood people, what they wanted. And it allows us to connect. Next page. So something happened in Indonesia around 70,000 years ago that changed the history of the world. Did you know that? What happened in Indonesia that created climate change? What you have a lot in Indonesia, volcanic eruption. Next. So there was a volcanic eruption in Tobu earthquake around 80,000 years ago. And that next page, that volcanic eruption, you have huge ash clouds that cover the earth. And so it's in Toba, Indonesia, 75,000 years ago. And it covered the earth, and the sun could not enter. And we had the Ice Age. So the Ice Age started in Indonesia. Congratulations. Okay. It's not a good history. And next page. And this is the Ice Age. Most of North America and Europe were covered in ice. And climate changed, and people have to migrate because it became colder. Right now we have climate warming because of carbon burning, so it's getting hotter. But 80,000 years ago, it began to get colder and colder. Next page. And so let me introduce you to Stephen Wells. He's a professor and geneticist. And now we can decipher our genes through hair. So if you watch CSI, you can detect who is a criminal if you find a hair or piece of fiber. We used to use fingerprint, but genetic analysis can identify individuals, 99.9% accuracy, who you are, who your parents are, and who your ancestors are. So what he did is he worked with National Geographic and got cotton swabs to test, to find out their genes. Next slide. And this is called Journey of Man. Next slide. So he went around the world to do a genetic analysis of mitochondria DNA that captures your genes and your history and the evolution. Next slide. So he went around the world with this swab. You can do DNA analysis. Next slide. And this is what he found. That is amazing and shocking. He found we are all descendants of one tribe in Kalahari, Africa. With Ice Age, with temperature going down, they moved. So you have L1, and you have different recessive gene, M, L3, and L2, to Northern Africa. And they crossed over to Saudi Arabia to Central Asia. And some of them went to North, and they became European. And some of them migrated to India and all the way to Indonesia, okay? And others went to Mongolia, to Siberia. And the land was frozen because of Ice Age, and they migrated to North America all the way to South America. So who is our ancestor 80,000 years ago? We came from one single tribe in Kalahari, Africa. So you're not Indonesian, you're not Korean, you're American, we're all African, okay? We're from one family. That's why we share 99.5% of the genes. So the concept of race does not make sense. Skin color is not your gene, okay? So if you get a lot of sun, you get black. If you go to Norway and you don't see the sun for 6 months, you become white. Okay? That is only a small fragment. So treating people based on skin color or the hair is not a scientific fact. We came from one single tribe in Kalahari, Africa. Your ancestors 80,000 years ago came from here. Okay? And they migrated around 40,000 years ago to Indonesia, and they migrated to Hawaii. That's why Indonesians have similar culture to Polynesians. Okay? And that's why you find pyramids in Egypt and Aztec, because we came from one single tribe. Next page. So it is, and these are your ancestors. Some of them look European, some of them look Asian, and some of them look African. So it is wrong to treat people based on their skin color, because that's not the software, okay? What is important is the software of your mind, not the skin color. And this creates a toxic relationship. Based on your skin color, you're treated as slaves, as less intelligence. Next slide. So, what did we do to survive? We domesticated animal and people. So, can you go over quickly to this slide? We domesticated cows, pigs. Okay, can you skip the slides quickly? Next page, next page. Okay. So these are, and next page, animals we domesticated. Next page, can you go down quickly? Pigs, next page, they produce a lot of offspring. Meat. Okay, okay, and chicken. And next page. And cows for milk. Next page. Can you go down? And we domesticated wheat and rice so we can have farming. Next page. And we live in villages in Java and Korea, but we domesticated women. Before agriculture, men and women were treated equal because men would hunt, women would gather vegetables and seed. In the agricultural community, women stayed home and had children. And so sex differences were created. Biologically, there are very little differences except of the chromosome. Let me ask you the question. Are men genetically superior to women, or women genetically superior to men, or we're the same? Genetically, are men superior, or women superior, or we're equal? No, that's not it. So men better than women, or women better than men genetically? The answer will surprise you. Women are genetically superior to men. So congratulations. But why are politicians men? That's why we have a big mess in countries all over the world. Why are business leaders men? That's why many companies go bankrupt. Men are very unstable, violent, and aggressive. That's why men need women. Women can live without men, I'm sorry. But men cannot live without women. And women live on average 10 years longer than men. So why are men dominating women? This is a problem. Next slide. And so women were domesticated to do housework, to raise children. Next slide. Okay. And this is what they were forced to do. Next slide. And to raise children. Next slide. And rather than making tools out of rock, we created bronze. How was bronze created? Well, we had fire. They noticed some of the rocks melted. And you can shape the rock. And this is called Bronze Age. Remember Stone Age, Paleolithic Age, then Bronze Age, you learned in high school? So what does it mean? So we can create weapons out of bronze. And it made war efficient. Next slide. And this is when we had slavery. So we domesticated people for labor, to build the pyramids, to build the Pantheon, okay? So we domesticated animal, but is it good to domesticate people for slavery, okay? And treat people as an object, to treat women as an object. And this is where the problem begins. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next. So this is the problem of Euro-American colonization and the creation of concept of race. Next slide. So if you go back 1,000 years ago, Europe was in dark ages, okay? 1,000 years ago. Where is the center of civilization, science, philosophy, and learning 1,000 years ago? So if you had to go back in time machine 1,000 years ago, where would you go to learn about science, philosophy, art, music, and learning? Where would you go? What was the center of learning 1,000 years ago? Baghdad. And this is when Islam flourished. Muslim scholars studied Greek philosophy, studied astronomy, studied mathematics, okay? And what we call Western Renaissance was created by Muslim scholars. And at that time, Europe was in dark ages. They were ignorant, they were poor, and they were barbaric. Next slide. And what happened to Europe? Well, they discovered silk. They discovered paper. And in Indonesia, they discovered spices. Eat American food. It's terrible. Where does ketchup come from? Chapchai. Ketchup is not American. It is come from China, called fish sauce, okay? So you have fish sauce, chapchai, and you add tomato from Mexico, and you have ketchup. Ketchup is originally a Chinese word, okay? Where does hamburger come from? Hamburg, Germany. Okay, people from Hamburg, they have ground meat, but it's flat. So hamburger comes from Germany. Where does onion come from? Egypt. Where does lettuce come from? Egypt. Where does cheese come from? Middle East. Where does mayonnaise come from? France. So what about McDonald's is American? Where does French fry come from? Not France, Belgium. They speak French, okay? Where does cola come from? From Africa, okay? And so through the Silk Road, they discovered silk and the most important paper and spices. Next page. And Marco Polo traveled all the way to China to get the Silk Road, the silk. Next page. Okay, next page. Next. And pottery, ceramics. And the cup is called China. Well, it's from China. Where do they get the noodles from? Pasta is from China, right? Noodles. Chinese invented noodles. And especially Dutch, Netherlands, colonized Indonesia for pepper because Indonesia produced a lot of pepper. And you have a lot of teak wood. Netherlands were very primitive barbarians 500 years ago. And they don't have any natural resources. And so Netherlands became rich because of Indonesia. England became rich because of China and in India. And they stole all the technology 800 years ago, and they claim it's theirs. So they should pay intellectual property to Indonesia, China, and India. Okay? Because without paper, without silk, without compass were invented by the Chinese. The number zero, who created number zero? It's not Arabs, actually, it's Indian mathematics. Okay? Equations, who created equation? The Chinese. Okay? But now Americans and Europeans claim we made it. No, you didn't. You're barbarians 1,000 years ago. And Silk Road allowed them to learn and acquire the technology, including gunpowder, that was used to colonize. Next page. Next. And spices. And paper is the most important because you used to write things on lambskin, and it takes a long time. Next page, with paper and printing press, books were published. Next. And Christopher Columbus wanted to go to China by going the other way. Why? Because Chinese sailors circumnavigated the world because they invented the compass and they have the map of the world. And he thought if he go west instead of east, he would reach India. And guess what he discovered? United States and the Americas. Okay? Next page. And that made the Spanish people rich because they stole all the gold from Aztec Indonesian culture. And this is a Spanish culture. They dominate these areas. Next page. And this is the French Empire, mainly in Africa. Next page, including Canada. So in Canada, they speak French. And the worst is the British Empire because they colonized and exploited these countries. And the Dutch colonized Indonesia. So Malaysia was colonized by the British. Indonesia is colonized by the Dutch. That's why the island of Borneo is part Malaysia, Kota Kinabalu, Sarawak, and the rest is Indonesian. So you should be very angry at the Dutch and the British, right? But Indonesians, you're not angry, you're happy, okay. Next page. So the British people, they had nothing to sell to the Chinese. They want to buy silk, they want to buy paper, and they want to buy spices. So what they did is capture Africans in Africa, next page, and created slavery. And they sold them to Brazil, next page. So, British had nothing to sell. They have no agriculture. So they captured slaves and sold them to United States and to Central America and South America. And they bought molasses and tobacco and sold it to Indonesians and Chinese. So now you're addicted to tobacco, okay? Thanks to the British. And the last thing that they sold is opium. They were the drug dealers because they had nothing to sell. And Chinese said, no, we don't want drugs. So what do? You invade them and destroy their empire. It's called Boxer's Rebellion. So the British created slavery as a basis of commerce. And how can you treat people like an object? And they say because they're different race. They're inferior race. And they need to be subjugated. And they need to be made Christian. Okay? And they did this with indigenous people in North America. They killed most of them and eliminated the culture, and indigenous people have no rights to the land. Okay? And this is an example of treating people like an object. Because you're stealing their land, you destroy their culture, you destroy their language. So the European countries became powerful by stealing everything from Asia, South America, and using the technology to develop warfare. And what he did, the British Empire did, is make different tribes fight with one another. So that's why you have problems in Indonesia, because the Dutch and the British forced different tribes, regions to fight with one another. The problem is, even after you get independence, people are still fighting, okay? But this is not natural. So this is something that you need to think about and work together. Okay, next page. Okay, we'll skip this one. Can you skip and go to how the brain works? These are indigenous people that are interviewed in Canada, where Canadian government stole the land. And 90% of the people are alcohol, drug addicted. They were sexually abused by Canadian missionaries and in school. Okay? And so they were treated because they created electric power plants that destroyed the land. Next page. So the land is beautiful, but in order to kill all the weed, nothing grows. And the lake does not have any fish and salmon anymore. Next page. So can you continue to several pages? And they're developing land for their own purpose. And these are healing sessions to go over the pains of colonization and dehumanization. Next page. Okay, I better skip this. We don't have enough time. Can you escape? I have a long lecture, but the PowerPoint is not cooperating. So can you go to the software of the mind and the brain? Skip. Oh, down a lot, okay. Okay, skip. Skip that part, yes. Okay, no, this part. So, because of the slow slide, I will present this and stop. So, what is the most important part of your body? Brain, okay. Do you know how to use your brain? You think, okay. How do you think? How do you make yourself better in analytical and much more intelligent than you are now? So you know how to use your finger to use this, right? Do you know how to use your brain? So did any professor teach you how to use your brain? So it's the most important part of your body and you don't know how to use it? And your university students? This is a problem. Because even psychologists did not know about the brain. And they had a misunderstanding. So let me teach you how to use your brain. To be happy, successful, and to live long. So in order to be happy, to be successful, and live long, you have to use your brain. But you don't know how to use it, right? So I will tell you about neurobiology and co-creativity. Creativity is not based on one individual. You have to do it together. And our brain is not fixed like our arms or legs. Okay, next page. So, Professor Huther says something revolutionary. The human brain is a social construction, not a biological construction, okay? And human beings can unfold their potential in a supportive communities where individuals can engage with each other that inspires them and contribute to the group. So how do you use your brain? In a community that supports you, that inspires you and contribute to the group. Okay? So now you know how to do it? Okay, not enough. Okay, I'll give you the more slide. Next slide. So this is a traditional view of the brain. You have a left brain and you have a right brain. And corpus callosum connects the brain. You learned that, right? And you have some people who are right brain oriented, who are analytical engineers. Left brain oriented, who are language, and women are supposed to be left brain. So is that correct? And you stick an electrode in the brain. If your hand moves, that's the part responsible for hand. You stick another electrode and you talk. That's part of you is responsible for talking, such as Broca area. That view of physiological psychology is wrong. You have 100 billion neurons. You're rich. It's like having $100 billion, okay? The brain cells. And the brain cells are not connected. And they can be connected 100 trillion times. So it is much more sophisticated than a smartphone. But you have to turn it on. You have to connect it. So you're born with 100 billion brain cells that can connect 100 trillions of times. But the problem is we only use 10% of our brain. You use it a little bit more night before the exam. But when you're relaxing, you don't use your brain. Next page. And so you have separate brain cells that are connected, and you have neurotransmitter that sends transmission. And it's a very slow process. It takes 1 second. Next page. And so traditional view, we're born with a fixed brain, but that's wrong. Our brain is very dynamic and can make new connections, and connections that are faster and more efficient. How? Experience. The more you use your brain, the more efficient it becomes. Okay? Next page. So, there are many parts of the brain that are important, but the limbic system in the middle, like the thumb, is the oldest part of the brain. It's where all the senses come through the limbic system. And this is where our memory is. This is where our emotion is. So whenever there's information that comes to the limbic system, emotions are attached. So the notion we can be objective, no, we can't. Because information and emotions are attached. But in psychology, we don't study emotion. We only study cognition. That's the problem with Piaget's developmental theory. Emotion, all information has emotions attached. And this is the frontal lobe, okay? Remember, this is a part of the brain that developed after we learn how to cook, okay? And this is where we make decisions, executive decisions. And this is where we learn and develop analytical skill. Next page. And so how does learning take place? So we have brain cells that are separate. But you learn how to bike, and it gets connected. And you ride your bike or motorcycle regularly, and the connection become stronger. And you develop a neural circuit. So when you first learn to ride a motorbike, it's very hard because you have to have clutch, legs, arm, and you have to hear, and you have to see people. But after you ride your bike, some people even check their SNS mail riding a bike. And in Jogja, you have your wife and 2 children in a small bike, okay? So the circuit becomes stronger and faster. That's why good football players practice a lot, okay? Because you know how to use your brain efficiently. So our brain is the fastest and the most efficient in terms of experience. So, how do you use your brain? Practice and experience. How do you learn English? Practice, practice, practice. How do you develop research skills? Learn over and over again. Why? You have to strengthen the connection. Do you want to sing K-pop? Practice, okay? Learn Korean, right? Okay? There's no easy way because your brains, and if you have to dance, you have to dance. You have to sing, you have to sing. You have to change your facial expression. You have to do your hair. You have to do cosmetic. It's very complicated. So the K-pop stars, they learn for 7 years how to sing, how to dance, how to put on makeup, how to do interviews, how to act. So do you want to be a K-pop star for 12 hours a day? And you cannot be more than 50 kilograms. You have to be on diet. And they can sing and look natural because they are able to connect. Not just singing, but dancing, but interviewing, learning English. Okay? Because the more you strengthen the connection, the faster you become. So this is how to use your brain. So you want to do well in university? Study. You know what separates a good student from a bad student? Not intelligence, not personality. The most important thing that you can do to get great, do you mean to tell you a secret? The most important thing that you have to do. First, go to a desk and sit on the desk. Open the book. If you sit on a desk and open the book, you'll read it. The problem is you don't sit on the desk. And you know you should, but the television is so interesting. Okay? So you watch television and you don't want to sit in the desk because that's boring. So if you watch television, your brain shuts down. Okay? Because you're watching stupid things on TV, especially K-pop. You know. How does it help you? But if you sit down, open your computer and book, you have to read it. And once you begin to read it, then, well, it makes sense. Another difference, you have a smartphone, right? Everybody has one. A good student would put the smartphone in the next room, go to their desk, and study and concentrate. A bad student will take the smartphone and every 1 minute check their SNS. And you call this ADHD, attention deficit. So if you use your smartphone next to your desk, you're not a good student, and you'll never be a good student. Because you have to use your brain. If you're taking a text and surfing the web, you're using your brain to surf the web and not to study. So, art of being a good student is not intelligence, it's not a good environment, sit on the desk. It's an exam period. Go to the desk, open the book, or open your laptop computer. I was a good student, you know why? You want me to tell you a secret of being a good student getting A+? It's very simple. I take good notes. So when the professors give a lecture, I take notes. Then, after the class, I summarize, because there are many things that is confusing. And I create headings in red, green, and blue, and I summarize the lecture. Then I summarize the textbook, okay? Then I combine the lecture notes with the textbook, and it's about 200 pages. Then I summarize 200 pages to about 40 pages, reduce the content. Then I summarize 40 pages to 2 pages. And I look forward to the exam, because the professor cannot have an exam question outside the lecture and outside the textbook, right? And I got A+. So I'm smarter than the professor because I'm prepared. Can you do that? No, you don't have the discipline. Do you summarize a textbook? No, you just read it. If you read it, you don't remember, you have to write it down. You're using a different part of your brain, okay? If you listen to music, do you remember the lyrics? No, you have to sing. And a better way to remember the music is to dance, okay? You use more of your brain, and it gets recorded. So don't just read it, summarize it. Don't just write word per word, summarize keywords. And combine the lecture with the textbook. And how could he create a question outside the lecture or the textbook? He can't. So you know exactly what's in the exam. And so all my friends photocopy my notes. Because if they photocopy it, they also get A. But not always. Only I get A all the time. Okay? That's how I became to graduate school, got a scholarship, and became a professor. Not because I'm intelligent, because I'm disciplined. And you have to discipline your emotion. Because, oh, I'm tired, I'm depressed. Okay, I'm depressed. You know what my father told me? I thought, I'm depressed, I don't want to study. Dig the backyard, okay? So we had a small vegetable garden. If you're depressed, dig it. So I was forced to dig all the soil. So I never told my father I was depressed anymore. Because by the time I'm digging the soil, I'm no longer depressed. I'm full of energy. Okay? So if you have people who are depressed, get them to do something. Depression is a luxury, okay? You have no reason to be depressed, okay? So get them to dig grounds or go shopping or do something. But the most important aspect, Albert Bandura, is what do you want to accomplish in life, okay? You have to have a goal. And if you want to become a psychologist, the most important indicator is your GPA, your grade point average. What does your grade point average tell you? It tells you what you're good at and what you like. So there are certain courses that you like, and you enjoy reading the book, and you get good grades. But there are certain areas that parents tell you you do well, like mathematics. You may not be good, but math is very simple. You simply practice, okay? So your GPA is an indicator of what you're good at, but it may not be what you want to do. You might want to be a singer or a dancer. I'm sorry, it's a little bit late. Okay? You have to start at a very early age. So it can be a hobby, okay? So your GPA is very important. And this is your morality. Your GPA is your morality. It tells you whether you're a good person or not. And professor, that's not fair. I'm a good person. I have a low GPA. No, you don't. You're a student. What is your job? Your parents are paying your tuition, and you get C's. You have a problem, right? And you're smiling, well, I'm a nice person still. But you may be. So you have to be disciplined in terms of what you want to achieve. And you have to use your brain in terms of practice. But sometimes it's boring studying by yourself, so study with a friend. Have a discussion, okay? So share notes and create notes together. So if I tell you to summarize all your books, you go crazy, right? So you have 3 friends, and you divide the chapter, okay? 2 chapters each. And you summarize it, and you share, okay? And your friends explain what's in the other chapters. So now, you summarize 6 chapters in 1/3 of the time. Isn't that more effective? Okay. And so, this is how you learn, through co-creating. Okay. And you have to learn to ask questions. You have to be curious. Because the psychology is the most boring and the most difficult subject. It's not easy, because it does not teach you about people. Originally, I was not interested in psychology. I want to find a girlfriend. I want to be romantic and learn how to date in high school. But as a Korean, as a bookworm, none of the girls were interested in me. So how do I get girls to like me? Okay. So one day I saw my brother's book, Attraction in Social Psychology, How to Get People to Like You. Oh, secret formula to dating. And it was very difficult. I was grade 10, and it was second year university level. Psychology is very difficult with all the terminology. So I read the book, looked up in a dictionary, and I mastered attraction. If you study social psychology, there's a chapter on attraction. And so I practice it, and it doesn't work. I cannot get a girlfriend. But when I entered university, psychology was so easy because I mastered it in grade 10. Okay? And so I got A+ in all the courses. And as a result, I became a professor in psychology, but no date. Okay? So sometimes it's not always you learn things that you like. I learned psychology because I wanted to date and find a girlfriend, but that did not help me. But it helped me to learn about psychology. So one of the things that you have to learn is what you're learning is American psychology. But you're Japanese or Sundanese or Balinese. Okay? So you have to understand, you have to think, does it help me to understand myself? And at the University of Toronto, I said no. So I majored in Korean studies, learned about Confucianism, Buddhism, and art, literature, and music, and I began to focus on culture. Okay? So you need to understand your culture. So what is a toxic relationship? Treating people like an object and treating people without any emotion or any sense of creativity. Or you have to stay home and cook because you're a woman, but they're genetically superior. So we subjugated women. Did you know how women subjugated men? So we have two chimpanzee that is dominated by alpha male. They get to get all the food and all the mating privileges, and they make life miserable for the other males. Then we have bonobo monkeys, very peaceful. They get along with everyone, and they said alpha female. Okay? So did we evolve from chimpanzee, very aggressive, competitive alpha male, or do we evolve from cooperative, harmonious bonobo monkeys, female dominated, genetically? What do you think? We evolved from bonobo monkeys. Human beings are cooperative. And how did bonobo monkeys create harmony? How did alpha female create harmony with the group? I'm not supposed to say this if you're Muslim. She has sex with everyone. And so if you have sex, men are very docile. They'll do everything you want. So traditionally, female control men through sex, and they have sex with everyone. So would Islam allow that? Would Confucianism allow that? So what men did in order to have family, control sexuality of women, so they can only have sex with their husband, and they became powerless. And of course, you have prostitutions where men pay to have sex with women, but you don't have women paying sex for men, right? So this is how men subjugated women, creating this domestication. And Islam, wearing hijab is not Muslim. Prophet Muhammad said you should be modest and cover up your chest. He never said about covering up your head. It's a Saudi Arabia Bedouin culture where there is no police, there is no government, and it's only your husband and man who can protect you. So if you read Quran, there is nothing about covering up your head. It says modest. But these are hadith. These are rules that Prophet Muhammad recommended. Okay? So Prophet Muhammad said, the pen is mightier than the sword, and you have to use your intellect. That's why Muslim culture flourished. But there are many customs, traditions, culture that subjugate people, like the Indian caste system, many religious practice. But if you look at religion very carefully, in Islam, it's ittihad, the ability to reason and think for yourself. That is considered the most important. And this is what Prophet Muhammad said. So read Quran carefully. Try to understand it. and I published 2 books on Islam, and I'm Korean, and I'm a Christian. Okay? So you can understand religion and what are the core values. And that's why Islam flourished 1,000 years ago. Science, mathematics, and philosophy. So it's wrong to say women cannot be educated, because Prophet Muhammad educated women. And did you know Prophet Muhammad protected Christians and Jews in Ummah community? So it's wrong to persecute Christians. So are you telling me Indonesian Muslims are right and Prophet Muhammad is incorrect? So a lot of Christians and Muslims stayed in Muslim communities because you have a freedom and right to your own religion. And this is called Constitution of Medina. He created a constitution where you follow the rules and everybody was respected. Okay? And the other reason a lot of Christians and Jews enter into the community, Prophet Muhammad has the lowest taxation rate. They only pay 10% tax. Other communities had to pay 30%. So a lot of Christians and Jews live peacefully with Muslims. And it is when the Arabs conquered Persia, they accepted Persian bureaucracy. And Persia created human rights and rule of law. Darius and Cyrus said everyone has a freedom to their own future. The king cannot tell them what religion they should have. So Persians freed the Jews from Babylonia and allowed them to return to Jerusalem. And it's in book of Daniel. Please give us the law that Cyrus and Darius gave. So Islam is a religion of peace. And jihad is self-striving, struggle with oneself to understand, to improve yourself. It's not fighting with people. Why? Because Muslims were persecuted by the Bedouins, and so they had to defend themselves. So you have right to defend yourself, but you don't have a right to wage war. Jihad is a struggle within oneself. This is my interpretation of Islam. Okay? So a Korean professor telling you a lecture on Islam. So don't be trapped by your religion. Don't be trapped by customs. Use your brain. And this is what Prophet Muhammad said. Okay? Don't have other people tell you who you are, including your parents. You know what happens when you get old? In life, there are twice as more bad things happens than good things. You have traffic accidents, you have people who betray you, your health becomes to get worse, and your friends and relatives die. So as you get older, you become very realistic. And so your mother will tell, be careful about traffic, be careful, don't go outside. No wonder they're depressed.
Professor Kim,
Yes.
I'm sorry for interruption.
Yes.
We have only 5 minutes.
Okay. That was my conclusion. So, if you want to be depressed, be realistic. Listen to your parents. Okay? Because they worry about you. They try to protect you. Then you cannot create and innovate. So you have to teach your parents to engage. So what happens when you get older, your brain begins to get blocked and you get Alzheimer. So what do you do when you get old? Meet new people, learn new things. And you know what is the best way to be happy? Be like a child again. Children are happy. Older you get, you worry more. And you have more anxiety. And you live in isolation. So what is the secret of success? Become Indonesian. Develop relationship. Develop a good relationship. And so you're happy. But the problem is you cannot be happy all the time because you have to buy technology. You have to be successful. You have to use more of your brain. So what is the conclusion? Maintain positive relationship. Don't remain in unhealthy relationship. That is abusive. Your relationship is important. Develop the skills that you can, that's what you want to do. So Koreans are successful, but Koreans are unhappy. Did you watch the Squid Game? In Korea, it's not a game, it's reality. If you compete, lose, you're out. Of course, you're not killed. So Koreans is reality. That's why Koreans are very unhappy. We have the highest suicide rate, we have the highest divorce rate, and most young people don't get married because they cannot afford to. So do you want to be like Korean? So why do you watch K-drama and K-pop? So you have to understand your own culture, but you cannot be like chimpanzees and monkeys and not develop your intellect, okay? You have to be curious, you have to be engaged, and you have to learn, okay? And so, what is my conclusion? Use your brain, okay? Maintain good relationship, be curious, engage, and co-create. And this is the secret to happiness, health, and long life, okay? Be optimistic, be positive, because of course, Jagja students are always positive. I met a student, he broke his arm, and he's happy he didn't damage his brain, okay? Of course, the best thing to do is not to have a traffic accident, but it is good to be positive. And Javanese and Indonesians are positive, that's why you are happy. But you have to develop yourself and develop your intellect, because economy is not doing very well. And you have to be an entrepreneur, not to make money, but to contribute back to society. So, conclusion, don't let other people define you who you are, okay? You develop your own potential, okay? And that means you have to be disciplined. Second, you have to work together in a group with other students, both grandmother and children. And so, why can't UMBY become #1 in Indonesia? Okay, and that is a goal. In psychology, I want to make UMBI #1 in psychology. Beat UGM that I taught, UI, UNPAD. Why not? So can you be #1 and be happy at the same time? Yes, if you believe, then it's possible, okay? So I'm here to make that possible. So I hope to see you again, work with you to make psychology #1 in Indonesia and the happiest student and faculty group in Indonesia. So thank you very much.
That's an amazing message from Professor Kim. Once again, give a big applause for Professor Kim. But now we still have a time for question. Everyone, siapapun yang mau bertanya, silahkan aja langsung bertanya. Don't be hesitate to up your hands and speak your question. And buat teman-teman yang ada di rumah, ya, ini di bawah ini ada kolom chat ya, itu bisa diklik kemudian your question, you can write your question in the chat box. Jadi yang di hybrid bisa questionnya bisa lewat chat box. Tadi ada, aku lupa nama kamu, Nurul ya, dan Nurul ada pertanyaan, kemudian ada satu lagi. Oke, we have two students. Mau langsung nanya atau mau di gimanain?
Good. Ini suara kan, Pak?
Try English. Use your brain, okay? It's okay if it's not perfect.
Good evening, Mr. First, I want to say thank you. It is just so a lot of argument that talking about why women domestified.
Why women don't?
Domestified.
Because of agriculture. And they were forced to stay home, have 10 children, and raise children.
And that's bonobo alpha female is just like, oh my God.
And
This is a new theory for me.
Also, women are cooperative and empathetic, where men are very unstable. So men engage in war and violence. And this is one way to accumulate wealth. And this is a problem in society when men run politics in companies. So now in the United States, more women are executives, and companies do much better because they focus on relationship, sustainable growth, not just winning for the sake of winning. So think about it. Who are the most intelligent students in this university? Who are the best professors? And they're not men, right? And so why should men lead? Think about it.
But in politically, women are praised so to participating in politics. Maybe until now, but that's not my question.
Yes, so my suggestion, don't get involved in politics. Start your own business, okay? And become professional and work for yourself and not men, okay? Because women in general treat people with dignity. Men tend to be abusive, okay? And the worst thing that you can have is a male boss. Not only in Korea, US, and around the world.
Is that any genetical involvement over that?
What? Genetical?
Yeah.
Because men have XY chromosome, right? And women have XX. And if you look at Y, it's very small. So men are deficient. And this Y is to produce testosterone that makes you aggressive. So it makes you a very good fighter. And so they don't have the other X. So in terms of chromosome, men have a deficit compared to women. And the Y chromosome is to produce testosterone that makes you aggressive and unstable. That's why Professor Huther says women are genetically superior to men because of XX. You have all the chromosome. Men have very small Y. Okay? So that's why they're unstable, violent, and aggressive. So they're closer to monkeys than women.
Okay. So my literal question is, you said we are creating and inventing new method for a life surviving strategy because we are changed our genetic. But Dawkins said genetic randomly shift its characteristics and makes us compatible to survive. Like he said, the blind watchmaker. My question is, which came first, genetic or shifting behavior that makes us survive, or which the stronger factor? I think when we talk about natural selection, there are multiple factors that contribute. I think Darwin isn't wrong.
Let me tell you my answer. Darwin is right about all other animals except human beings. Darwin cannot explain one thing, contraception, because he claimed we try to produce as many offsprings as possible. But in Korea, we have contraception like condom to reduce the number of children. So how can Darwin explain that? Darwin cannot explain empathy in his theory. There's no empathy. Darwin cannot explain creativity. So human beings is a very weak species. We should have been extinct long time ago. And there were many Homo species, Homo habilis and even the island of Commodore, very small. Only one survived. That's Homo sapien. And so if you look at dogs, there are 400 different types of dog, 200 different types of cats because of adaptation to their environment. Human beings, we control our environment. We create environment and we even destroy it through global warming. So Darwinian theory is wrong when it comes to human beings. We survive not because of competition, but cooperation. We hunted together. We care for one another. So Darwinian theory is wrong when it comes to human beings.
Okay. So which the strongest factor? I mean, which the strongest factor? Shifting behavior, or genetic?
Both are wrong.
Part of it.
Albert Bandura. So I'm born with a genetic factor. Can I change my gene? Can I change my genetics?
No.
Yes, I can.
You can.
Yes. It's called epigenetics. The experiences that I have in terms of diet can turn on some of the genes and increase the volume or lower the volume. If I have a lot of stress, certain genes are turned off, okay? So the most important thing, I can change my genes. So if you study and use your brain, you can change your genes. Okay, you did not know about that, epigenetics. Secondly, can you change your culture? So both your genes and cultures are difficult to change, but what can you change? Your behavior. And this is called human agency. I cannot be a basketball player because I'm short, okay? So my body is limited, but my body gives me certain potential. My culture also provides certain resources. So my body provides resources in terms of the brain and the connectivity. My culture, my parents provide resource. So Bandura said, human agency, we're agents of our behavior. We decide what the goal, because even though your parents tell you, you decide your own goal, what to wear, how to do your hair. This is agency. And so we use our biological resource, a cultural resource to achieve what we want. So Steve Jobs, he did not come from a good family. He came from a broken family. He was not well educated, but he wanted to create a phone that's easy to use. So is it genes or environment? He had a terrible environment. He had terrible genes, but he had a mission, a purpose, to make phones or to make computer easy to use. Elon Musk, do you know Elon Musk? Yes. Did you know so let me ask you this question. Who is the most famous African American in the world, businessman? Businessman, the most famous African American businessman, Elon Musk. He's from South Africa, okay? And he had a very abusive father. So he had a mental health problem called Asperger syndrome, autism. Okay, autism. Richard Branson had dyslexia. Okay? So he was abused by his father. And he was very afraid. And so do you know what he decided to do? He was afraid of darkness. And so he read science books and said, darkness means absence of photons. So there's nothing to be afraid. So he decided not to be afraid. So can a person with autistic symptom become the most innovative leader in the world? Because Elon Musk had a vision. I want to promote sustainability. If we keep burning coal, our Earth will be destroyed. And the second is, I want to colonize Mars. So he's a little bit crazy. Why would you want to go to Mars? There's nothing there. So he developed SpaceX to send rockets. And he respected Nikola Tesla, who created induction motor. And he said, why are we burning fossil? Why don't we use electricity? And he created electric car. So if you look at Elon Musk, he has mental health problems, Asperger syndrome. If you look at Steve Jobs, they don't have good genes. They don't have good environment. So his mother divorced his father and came to Canada. So he came to Canada. Then he went to Stanford University, and after 1 week said, it's boring, there's nothing to learn. So he created his own company. So our biology does not explain our behavior, right? Because there's so many variation. Even your brothers and sisters, you don't behave the same, right? Very different. And the environment does not explain your behavior. What explains your behavior, Albert Bandura, is a goal that you set for yourself. And your experiences, one. And second is modeling, the Bobo doll experiment. We learn through models, okay, watching other people. I want to be like Kim. You watch influencers in YouTube, and you learn. So we learn through modeling. and through professors. And third most important, social support. You can do it. So if there are people who support you. So the most important thing in predicting human behavior is the goal yourself and the self-efficacy that you develop. So if you do survey studies, intelligence does not explain your behavior. Your personality, not maybe 2%. Your income, 2%. Social support and self-efficacy explain 50% of your variance, 50% of your happiness, your academic grade, and trust in other people. Okay? So I'm sorry, you learned the wrong psychology. That's American. It doesn't work. So it's not biology, it's not culture, but what do you do with it? How do you use it? Okay? So you're probably Javanese growing up in Jogja, so you have access to resources. And the question is, how do you use it? Okay? So this is the theory of Albert Bandura that you should read. Okay? And it works. And if you do studies, and we will do it at UMBY, you will understand people much better. Okay? So I'm a Korean, but I grew up in Canada. I was discriminated, but I developed myself. Okay? So if I lived in Korea, I would not be a professor and I could not speak Korean. So it's not, so environment is different, but I learned how to use it. So do you know what my motto is? If you cannot join them, because they don't allow me to join, beat the hell out of them. So I competed and beat Americans and Canadians in academia, okay? I did not accept the rules. I did not accept that their definition I'm inferior because I'm Asian. So I speak English better than Canadians and Americans. I'm a better researcher. And why? Not because I'm intelligent or not, because I had a goal. And I worked hard. And I collaborated with my colleagues. So are leaders born or are they created? No. They are self-made. You make it yourself. And you need the support of your families and friends. Okay. So you have more questions. Very good. Keep on asking, but we should allow other people.
Another question. If you need some water.
Yes. He's telling me to
Okay,
calm down.
sambil Prof. Kim minum, silahkan disampaikan pertanyaannya.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Professor Kim. I would like to probably stipulate a little bit on the situations in Jogja.
Okay.
Culturally, we are, I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but the existing kraton with the culture that is surrounding it posed a situation where we are expected to behave of a certain culture, sometimes involuntarily, because then, well, if, like you said, if we can't, we should beat it. That's impossible in the context of Jogja or probably Javanese. However, because it is a learned behavior, I'm not sure because, yeah, definitely leaders are not born. I'm not sure if we are still in the era where monarchy outside of the Constitution should still exist, aside from being cultural figures. Do you have any recommendation on nations that are still relying on such culture?
Okay, such as Britain, and look, is what
Probably
happened.
not as far as Britain.
Okay.
Probably like the Thais.
Yes, and look what is happening to the king. And I can criticize the king of Thailand because I'm not in Thailand, but if I criticize it, I'll be locked up. For your reference, I met your sultan of Yogyakarta. And he wanted to make Jogja like Korea. And I said, are you sure? Because he liked the technology and innovation. I said, no, you don't want it to be like Korea. You don't want the suicide. You don't want the fierce competition. You don't want the divorce. And so he did not like me because he thought Korea is a good model. Of course, economically, It's a good model. But socially and culturally, I tell Indonesian, Thai, Malaysians, develop your own song. Why are you singing K-pop? Okay, it's ridiculous. Be creative. Of course, Korean government likes the fact that you listen to K-pop so they can sell your products and import the culture. But you're being colonized in a way. Of course, if it's entertainment, it's okay. So, Sultan Yogyakarta is a very distant factor, and there are a lot of limitations. So let me talk about Mr. Siputra. Do you know Siputra Group? Did you know he came from the island of Sulawesi? Okay? And his father was Chinese, and his mother was Japanese. And he was very poor, and they ran a small store near the ocean. Then the Japanese came. You know you were colonized by Japan, right? But you don't hate Japanese like Koreans hate Japanese. So they wanted to take his store. So they said he was a spy. So they would take over the store near the waterfront. And he died in jail. Okay? So Mr. Siputra did not have a father. And he was not a good student. He had to repeat grade 2 twice because he hated studying. He was more interested in raising dogs and riding horses. So imagine you were forced to repeat grade 2 and your father was killed. So he had to return home to take care of his mother. So how do you take care of your mother? Okay? Mr. Siputra is tall, about 185. And so he knows how to train dogs. So the only thing that he could do, because he lost his home, he had to live in a coconut grove, okay? And so it's very hard. So can you eat coconut and survive? Of course you can. So he decided to hunt for wild pigs, okay? Which in Sulawesi there are lots. And the only people who hunt wild pigs are Christian. And that's how he became Christian. And he raised 18 dogs to hunt pigs. And he was very good. So he learned to run fast to protect the dogs. And he has scratch marks all over his body because he's running through the jungles of Sulawesi to catch wild pigs. And they're not easy to catch because they're fierce. And he was able to catch enough pig to feed his family. Then he realized, I cannot take care of my mother and my family catching pigs. So he decided to go back to school. Remember, he was a dropout and he had to repeat grade 2 twice. But he went back to school. And of course, he was a good athlete because he was running in the jungle. So he represented the school in running. Then he wanted to be an architect. He wanted to build things like his father. And he studied very hard. And he was admitted to ITB, okay? So he was not very intelligent. And when he went to ITB, he did not have enough money to pay tuition. So he created his own consulting company, okay, in ITP. So can you create your own consulting company? Why not? Okay? And after his graduation, he decided Indonesia has to change. We're too poor. Infrastructure is lacking. So he developed a proposal to develop Senyam project, okay, near the airport, where there was a market. So he asked his friend to join the company, one other Chinese and one Javanese. And he arranged a meeting with the governor of Jakarta. And the governor said, this plan is too big. You have to meet President Sukarno, okay? And he met President Sukarno and convinced him to support the urban renewal. So Mr. Siputra started property development in Indonesia, not Lipo Group or Pomodoro or other groups that are very well politically connected because he's Chinese. And he's also Christian, okay? And how could he succeed? He succeeded by working with his friends and created the Jaya Group. Do you know the Jaya Group? The construction, okay? So he created the state-owned company. But the problem is, Jaya Group would only give him 3% of the profit, and he shared 1% each. And with 1%, you cannot grow the company. And so he continues to work with Jaya Group, but he created the Metropolitan Group that created Pondok Indah, that you may know in Jakarta. Very rich, upscale. And when his children came back from the United States, he created the Ciputra Group. So he created state-owned enterprise, professional CEO enterprise, and family-owned businesses. So he was a poor man with no shoes from Sulawesi. And if you visit Ciputra World and a lot of the property developments, even in Jogja, Bali, he has 70 property developments. Also in Hanoi, the largest, and also in Calcutta. So, what is the moral of the story? You can complain, oh, he's Chinese, or he did not come from a good university, or he's Christian. So, you focus on what you can do rather than what you cannot, okay? So what are the things that you can do as a student or faculty member, okay? And how can you develop the university? How can you develop the community and culture? So what you need to do is teach your sultan how to do it properly, okay? Because if you talk to him, he will not listen to you because you don't have any power. But if you show how to create an enterprise, wonderful community, sultan will listen to you, okay? So it is not good to be confrontational in Asia, I learned. You fight and you win in the United States, but if you try to have an argument with Japanese, they all run away because they hate conflict, okay? And so the question as a Korean, why is a Korean professor in Jogja at UMBY? Because I see potential. What can you do? Can UMBY, number one, because I used to teach in UGM, work with them 15 years, and UI, UMPAD, ITB, okay? Yes, you can. So believe that you can do it. And if UMBI becomes number one, starting with psychology, the Sultan will become interested. How did you do it? Well, let me tell you how to do it. So you don't fight with your parents. You don't fight with the professors. You show them a better way. Because now in Korea, all the kids are teaching their grandparents how to use a smartphone, right? To send pictures and go shopping during corona pandemic. So as children, they're not powerful, but they have certain skills. So I conducted studies in political culture. We lived under dictators, and our government, our president is an idiot, I can tell you, not in Korea, but here, okay? But what can you do about the president who was elected, okay? When I came to Jakarta, I saw this nightmare because President Joko Widodo likes biking. So they took half of the lanes and created bike lanes, the bureaucrats. I haven't seen one bicycles. And you create these bike lanes for cyclists who doesn't exist. And people in Jakarta are mad as hell because there's a lot of traffic, okay? So the bureaucrats, they sit in their office and they draw these things, and it doesn't make sense. I don't care if it's Sultanate or previous presidents who are very corrupt. I will not mention the name because, but don't focus on these people. Focus on what can you do. As a student, faculty member, in the community, how can you make it better, okay? Be a model and change the community from within. So one of the things is Indonesians, you don't look at the politicians or the university rector. What can you do as a person? What is a positive change that you can create? And how can you work together to make UMBY number one in Indonesia? And if you make UMBY global, international, and most successful, the Sultan come and ask you, can I talk to you? Then he will listen. If you're not successful, he will not listen to you. So I work with the Nobel Institute. I work with the biggest company in the world, but you have to have something to offer them. okay? You have to have an idea. And so you have to learn to build, not destroy, okay? And so I don't know the Sultan very well, but I disagree with him in terms of making Jogja like Korea, okay? It's not possible. He does not have the money, and he does not have the expertise. And I told him, why don't you develop Javanese culture, Jogja as a tourist destination, develop agriculture by developing the technology, make the lives of the people better. And that will be interesting. So I know UMBY has agro-technology. Korea has very good technology in agriculture. So I will contact Koika, why don't you invest in Jogja, work with UMBY, okay? And make it better so the farmers can have higher income. They can have better housing. And also, the worst part is healthcare is terrible. Your hospitals are disasters. You will die going to those hospitals. You need better hospitals. And where are Koreans running these hospitals, okay? So can you develop a better healthcare system? So for me, those are much more important issues we need to deal. Healthcare, employment for students, and developing tourism, sustainable tourism based on culture, okay? One other thing I don't understand is why are Indonesians throwing out garbage? In Korea, we recycle 70% because we don't have oil and natural resources. So why do not Indonesian can start recycling, sustainability, and introducing your culture? So my challenge to you is create projects that is so successful, Sultan has to listen to you and he has to change. Wouldn't that be nice? But problem is that's a lot of work. Okay.
Okay. That's a long explanation and very crystal answer from Professor Kim. Informasi juga bahwa acara hari ini juga disiarkan live di YouTube Psikologi UMBY. So apabila teman-teman ada yang ingin misalnya ada tugas gitu ya, aduh ingat tugas kayaknya bahasan dari Profesor Kim is so interesting, jadi bisa buka YouTube-nya Psikologi UMBY. Apakah kita masih ada waktu untuk pertanyaan? Halo? Apakah sudah habis ya? Okay, unfortunately, Professor Kim, we don't have more time, so we need to stop the afternoon session today, and because we still have a dinner session, we need to stop today seminar. And Professor Kim, on behalf of my faculty and from myself, I would like to super thank you for Professor Kim. Buat teman-teman semuanya, kita bilang terima kasih pakai bahasa Korea ke Profesor Kim bareng-bareng ya. Tahu bahasanya? Oke? 1, 2, 3. Kamsahamnida Profesor Kim.
Terima kasih.
Sekali lagi tepuk tangan yang meriah. Thank you Professor Kim. For the time and the place, I will back to the MC.
Thank you, Mr. Angga as moderator and Professor Uchol Kim as speaker, and all participants for bringing us to a very productive session today. The next session is photo sessions, and this session will be divided into two parts. The first part will ask from all lecturers to come to the front. But before the photo session, we will give a token of appreciation for the speaker and moderator. For Prof. Kim and Mr. Angga, please come to the front. And from Mrs. Reni to give the appreciation. Give applause, please. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Reni, Prof. Kim, and Mr. Rangga. Okay, the session will be 3 of them. Oke, untuk sesi selanjutnya silakan mahasiswa dipersilakan untuk berdiri dan merapat ke tengah. Foto bersama dengan dosen dan Prof. Kim. Silakan mahasiswa untuk segera merapat ke tengah biar kelihatan di kamera. Okay. Thank you to the speaker, moderator, and all participants who have been good participants in this event. May we all got much useful knowledge in our life. Enough from us. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.